friends, as we discuss Kate Chopin's short stories, we realize that she addresses the audience in a manner that is invisible. She doesn't address, she in fact shows, maybe it's a kind of a picture of a person that she has picked up for characterization, for presentation in her short stories. And the short story, I would like her to say something more about the reference that she made in the previous discussion, so that the point is properly made and we understand the implications of what this writer does generally. So,
Right.
Bajaj,
So,
yes.
as I was saying that, Kate Chopin actually builds very complex characters. The central character, for instance, is put beyond any conclusive understanding for us. In the sense, there is no closure to these characters that she presents, that there is no conclusive understanding around the character that you can draw. The characters act in a particular way in the stories and she lets them be. So, I think that is what creates this kind of mystery around them and opens space for us to play around the text or to interpret it from various angles. As I mentioned in my previous lecture, she also offers a critique of conventional feminine roles, whether they are of a wife or a mother. I discussed the story where we discussed the role of the mother there, but I will move on to other stories where, for instance, she is talking about the wife and the wifely duties. But before we do that, she's also a writer who actually dares and defies societal norms. The tone of both the writer and her characters, this tone is of indifference to the world around and a sense of, you could call it a sense of preserving the self. So, the tone itself kind of dares and defies, and that is, I think, what was found to be more startling by the readers of the time in the 19th century. So, characters build relations. For instance, even if obviously characters build relationships, right? So, and her stories are all about relationships in that sense, but characters build relationships, for instance, of love away from the accepted social roles, sometimes even transcending them, in the sense that they have their own concept of love, and that love may not mean monogamous love, for instance. That love may not mean a particular thing, but may convert itself into various forms that we might find jarring and at times absurd, because we have never seen or heard of those kind of relationships, but they exist in her stories. So, she's a writer who actually projects characters who become aware of their own lives, caught in this kind of a, caught in life's problems. So, I think that is also why, that is very important to her characters. So, in the context of this, in the context of this background, I'd like to take you to this short story, which is her letters. Now, the story, Her Letters, is about at one level, it is about a husband and wife story. It's the kind of love that is shared between them. And at another level, Chopin actually reveals complexity of this marital relationship that they share, where love and strife exist in strange ways and exist together. For instance, in Her Letters, the woman is a caring wife and the husband is devoted and faithful to her, and yet her letters, that she has been keeping for a while in a bundle preserved, these letters that she has, we become aware, they project a different side of her personality which is completely unknown to the husband. So, in this, while the husband thinks that, well, she was always very devoted and she thought of my comfort and care, she was also cold and passionless. And yet, when we see her engaged with her letters, it's almost like she has a love affair with the letters that she has, and they belong to some past time, and she's confused in the moment what to do with her, because she's ailing and she knows that she would die anytime. So, the wife is in a dilemma whether she should burn these letters sitting by the fireside, or should she keep them still with her as a source of succor or a sense of constant fulfillment that she might have till the end of her days. And she knows that one fine day she'll die because she's ailing, so how should she work this out? She finally decides to wrap keep the letters for herself till she can read them and rejoice in the memory of a past affair that she had with another man perhaps. It is not given to us, but it is certainly not the husband. So there is this kind of a memory of this passionate, untempered passion that she calls it, that she shared with this person. Now, what she tells us vis-a-vis her letters is very different from the narrative that emerges from the husband's view, because for the husband she's always been very cold and indifferent, but there is a very different side to her personality that emerges when she is engaged with the letters, and the letters in itself becomes personified, I believe, and they are the lover for her, because she's sniffing them, she's pressing them against her lips and all of that. So there is a very passionate engagement with the letters that she has that remind her of her past love, and she doesn't want to throw them and she doesn't want to discard them at the moment because she's still drawing succor from them in that sense. So you find that she leaves, one day she is dead, and after a year after her death, the husband actually finds this wrapped packet and she leaves a note on top, and she says that this is addressed to my husband and I would like him to destroy this unopened. And the husband is confused because she knows that and she says, I trust in the faithfulness of my husband and I want him to destroy this bundle unopened. Now the husband is confused. Was she bearing a secret? If he thinks that he knows every part of her life, and he has always known there was no secret, but the letters reveal that there's a secret lover. Now the husband knows that obviously there could be only one secret that a woman would want to leave and not share with her husband, but he doesn't have the heart to open them because the bundle very clearly says that destroy them unopened. And as a faithful husband, he does exactly that. He thinks of opening it, but he doesn't. He goes to the river and he throws this bundle in that river and comes back home, but he is destroyed in just this journey. He's completely devastated when he understands that his wife wanted him to destroy a wrapped bundle, and when she's dead, and she didn't want him to see it. So he goes mad thinking about, the husband is unwilling to throw, but then he does that, but he goes mad thinking about who could this person be. He tries to meet all her friends and he's not able to come conclusively to any end, and finally he's so again, as I say, devastated by this entire thing, that he decides, he goes back to the river and he says that only the river has the answer, no one else, or she, and he decides to join them. So there is a kind of a reference towards the end of the story that the husband has jumped into the river, but not directly. She doesn't say that he has jumped into the river. She merely says that he joins, he knows that the river has the answers, so he goes to the river to find the answers and joins them. So there is obviously there is indirectly a reference that, and that's where the story ends. So I find this a very one heartbreaking story, because it's a tragedy of this kind of love, but there is so much intensity to each character, be it the wife or the husband.
Is the husband also drowned while jumping into the river?
That's not said. In fact, even this is not told to us that he jumps. He's so confused and he's desperate to find the truth, and he goes to the river and he says there is peace there and the river is calling him and he knows the answer is in the river. So these are the ways. It's a kind of a puzzle. She doesn't directly say that he jumps into it. This is something which is my interpretation of it.
No, but there is a strong suggestion.
There is a very strong
because
suggestion.
He has joined her.
Yeah. He says that through the river, through those letters, he will join her and join the river, which has the answer to this question. And so in a way the suggestion exists. So which is what I meant, subtle in that sense, that she's a writer, she's a poet also. She's a writer of subtle references. And
if it's a tragedy, whose tragedy is it?
I think it's again, there is a larger force of tragedy. I think both of them, it's a tragedy of their love, and they had different loves. It's not like the wife loves him, but that is the husband, but she's not passionate about, or she has her passions elsewhere, and she knows that that kind of life and that kind of thrill and the kind of love that she experienced with another person is not the same as she had with her husband, and she knows the husband is devoted and is faithful. So there is this kind of complexity which I also find in Virginia Woolf, for instance, the kind of relationship and the marriage that she had. So I think it's the complexity of any emotion or relationship that Chopin is trying to build. It's not like a linear sort of a thing. There are falls and there are heartbreaks and there are frustrations and desperations in any relationship. And I think this is what she's also trying to highlight in the marriage between this couple in her letters, where there is a third person involved, and they're all dealing with their own set of emotions. I think that is what
the interpretation that you've given to this story gives me the impression that perhaps it's a realistic story, it's a realistic appraisal of the matrimonial situation, and that it's different kind of version of realism.
Yes, that's true. So in that sense, when you say different kind of version of realism, I think you could place it closer to Flaubert, for instance, where there is some sense of naturalism, but also a very deep engagement with the complexity of relationship. You see, also there is this sense that the individual, there is a kind of a choice between duty and love, desire and responsibilities, and the individual, the two actually pull the individual in different directions. So there is responsibility on one side and desire on the other. There is love on the one side and duty on the other. So I think Flaubert also deals with this in Madame Bovary, for instance, and Chopin constantly deals with this. In fact, The Awakening is to do about this again, about a woman's, a married woman's desires and about her responsibilities. So that kind of a equation.
She would have read Flaubert.
Yes, they were contemporaries.
Contemporary, so, and she knew French, as you pointed out in the beginning.
Yes. So I think there is this therefore a kind of complexity which is there. For instance, now if I take you to a very different story, Regret, and that story is based on just a woman who has decided to live her life all by herself. Yeah, so it is the story where you have a woman who is who at 20 decided not to marry and remained unmarried till 50, and it is when her neighbor leaves her children in her care that she begins to first be frustrated by them, because there are 4 children in the house and she's never in fact she's not used to having them around. So Aurelie tries to take care of these children, and in the process she actually becomes fond of these characters or fond of these children, and she learns to live with them. She learns to hear their chatter and cries and laughter that is echoed through the house. So she's a woman who's living on the farm. She has a dog and she has farm hands. She's been a sturdy woman working on the farm, and she's never regretted it. The writer tells us that she's never regretted it for a moment in her life. But when these children come to stay with her when their mother is away, it is at this point that Aurelie becomes fond of these children. And when the mother takes the children away after 2 weeks, Aurelie is left in a state of despair, because the story ends with, and I quote, "She gave one slow glance through the room into which the evening shadows were creeping and deepening around her solitary figure. She let her head fall down upon her bended arm and began to cry. Oh, but she cried, not softly, as women often do. She cried like a man, with sobs that seemed to tear her very soul." Unquote. So, this is another kind of story I'm saying, where the regret. So it's not like she's a radical feminist who says that move out of this. I think she's also trying to move out of any particular societal role. What she's trying to get at is the individual's life and the individual's own, how individuals deal with their own emotions and how they deal with their set of circumstances. So for instance, in Regret, you find that the woman has been outside matrimony, but it's not like she has been she's been happy till she realizes that she doesn't want to be solitary and would like to have children in her house. So and I think what she's also getting at is human beings very an essential need to be with fellow human beings. I think that's more at the center of regret, that human beings are not meant to be solitary beings, that it is an isolation which may be a forced isolation, but essentially human beings are social people, and they enjoy themselves best in human company. And in Aurelie's case, in regret, that is exactly it. She had been living alone and she thought that life was okay, but then when she has children, and I don't think she's trying to accord any importance in the sense that, oh, she wished she had her own children. It is what she misses is a sense of laughter and chatter in the house, which refers to human company. So I think she is also referring to this need of human beings to connect with other human beings, and any kind of isolation, even if there is isolation within matrimony, I think that is critiqued in that sense. That
is that your interpretation, or are there statements to that effect?
No, these are my interpretations. Again, as I said, that Chopin leaves very, she generally doesn't give any morals of any kinds. There are no morals in her stories. You will hardly find any sort of a stance that the writer, so the character is made to play out one's emotion, devoid of any responsibility that the writer might want to take or is conscious to take. You know, the writer takes no responsibility whatsoever consciously to present us a particular case and then present a theory around that case. I think it is very much to do with the impulse and the moment that she tries to capture, and how characters feel in that moment of life.
There is no statement in the story that human beings are supposed to be social.
No.
So it's a kind of suggestion that is hidden in the description.
It is obvious, that's the suggestion, right? That why is it that, for instance, Aurelie cries at the end? Why is it that she finds these evening shadows were creeping and deepening her solitary figure? Of course, there is a sense of there is a sense of isolation and this sense of solitary living that she has had so far, and she has been a sturdy, strong woman. But this is a moment of her weakness where she gives in to her emotions. I mean, I'm calling it weakness. It may not be a weakness to give in to her emotions, but she has not regretted. She had a proposal at the age of 20 which she declined, and she continued to live as an independent woman on her own terms. But there are moments of choice. There are moments when a possibility, again, this is also to do with the question of possibility, as I said, that she opens these possibilities in characters' lives. For instance, in Aurelie's life, she has been having a life and a course life that is going on all right, and the children are placed in her house for 2 weeks, and that gives her an idea or a possibility of an alternate life that she could have had if she had married and if she had her own children. So the possibility of another life makes us aware of what she has lost or what she has gained. Again, in the case of, if I go back to his letters, then the wife's love letters to another man refer to a possible life that she could have had with that man and not with the man that she is living in, even when she loves the man that she stays with. If I go back again to the third story that I discussed in my previous lecture on her silk stockings, right, then you find that there she's again referring to that life which she could have had if she did not have her children. You know, a day in her life was exactly what she had desired her life to be, but the reality is that she needs to return to her place and feed her children, go back to work and get on those cotton stockings and be back on work. She cannot live her life in silk stockings. They are not meant for labor, they are not meant for work, they are meant for pleasure or for luxury. So that kind of an alternate life was available to her on that day when she treated herself to everything that she wanted to do. So the possibility of an alternate life, I think the characters awaken to the possibility of an alternate life within their own banal sort of mundane life that they have been living. And this is what I think is the joining thread in all these three stories
I was
that
coming
I have
to this
discussed.
point that you have discussed 3 stories, and in the last 2 stories there is a kind of joining thread. But how do you also combine this with the first story that you discussed?
I just told you, that the silk stocking, I compared all three.
Before, which is the first one?
I was talking about the silk stockings, yeah?
That was the first.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and and her letters is the second,
oh, yes,
and
yes.
the third is regret.
Yes.
So, all three, a pair of silk stockings is also about the same thing that I was saying, that it is about alternate life that the character indulges in, that she buys, for instance, that one day in her life. You know, she buys that one day for herself in that life, but that is not her life.
That's
she
the
has to
alternate
return.
situation. That's the alternate situation.
So with that money that she finds by chance, she buys for herself a life that is not her own. You know, that is a life which is in a way rented, or an alternate life that she has lived for a day, but she knows she needs to return to her children to make a living for them, and that kind of indulgence is not for her. So I think there is a parallel life of indulgence that all these characters build, and then they return to their banal mundane lives for themselves.
Which is a kind of critique of the society in which they live.
which is a critique of societal sort of roles that they are supposed to play. So you know, like for instance, in Edna Pontellier, who's the protagonist of the Awakening novel that Kate Chopin is most famous for, you know, she says towards the end of the novel that, and I quote, I have got into a habit of expressing myself. It doesn't matter to me, and you may think me unwomanly if you like. So, unquote. Now, the point is that all these women are expressing themselves, whether it is the protagonist of the silk stockings, or his letters, or regret, they are all expressing themselves, and expression in itself is considered to be unwomanly, because women's roles were supposed to be domestic and to express what they want, you know. And a critic in fact says this about the Awakening, that the Awakening is about a woman who wants to do something and she does it, and then leads to her tragedy. So you see, there is always a tragic note along with this emancipation. There is emancipation, you know, all these women emancipate themselves through the alternate lives that they live. You know, there is a moment of emancipation, but often there is an accompanying tragic note with this emancipation. You know, for instance, her letters is a tragic story. The Awakening also, Edna's end is tragic. So in a way, there is a tragic note. I think that is also a lot to do with the possibilities that 19th century did not give women at the time. But you know, Kate Chopin faded in her own time as a writer. She shot to fame in her own regional place. You know, she was seen as the who's who of America in the 19th century. So she got enough fame in her time, but that died down and she faded in history. Her genre also was seen as not the kind of a lasting genre. But she was brought back to life when women's movement rediscovered her in the 1960s, and her works you know, challenged the reader to accept the new forms, new kind of love, or love outside matrimony, all these. So they challenged the reader in the 1960s to accept it as the new kind of living, and they became, the energy of the women's movement really found, you know, the women's movement actually found this kind of energy in her works. So she is revived during this period, and now of course she is seen as you know, the precursor of feminist thought in the 19th century. So I think her relevance lies there, and she wrote 2 novels before the Awakening, and one of them she burned because she thought that, you know, she was not a good enough writer in that sense, and she turned to short stories. So for a very long time she wrote these short stories, almost like flash fiction. Some stories are as short as 2 pages. So in that sense, you know, she's constantly innovating in the form itself, and the Awakening is the build-up of all the narrative you know, techniques that she has tried in the stories. She builds this up in the Awakening. So I suggest.
How would you conclude the discussion on Kate Chopin?
I think I'd like to say that she is a very unconventional writer, avant-garde in many sense, and a writer who is as I said, unapologetic about her stance, her tone, her attitude, and her desires, and she's able to liberate herself, her mind, you know, what we call a free mind really, which is not prejudiced, which is not tied down to any sort of a parochial, narrow viewpoint. I think she's a writer who gives free rein to her characters to be and do what they like, and be judged for them if the world would have them, would judge them in that manner. But she would continue to express, and she calls it unwomanly, but I think it is her womanly expression that she
I
does.
believe the word unwomanly is a kind of irony about it, because what is supposed to be unwomanly, that's what she is doing all the time. So it's a
Right.
kind of, it's a stance of protest so far as
Right.
she is concerned. So friends, in this discussion, Dr. Bajaj has pointed out some of the main features, seminal features of short story writing and thematic richness that the American scene at that point of time offered. And I think this will interpret for us not just the American scene, but also womanhood as it was evolving in the 19th century. Thank you.